The sun had just collapsed behind the dunes when my engine coughed its last breath. The desert swallowed sound. No wind, no birds, just heat bleeding from cracked asphalt. I walked until the horizon bent into a crooked sign, Red Hollow Motel, vacancy. The neon O flickered like it was gasping for air. A wooden board hung crooked on the office door. Words had been carved, not written. Deep grooves in splintered pine. Check in before dark. Don't open room 6. Keep curtains closed after midnight. If you hear scratching, don't open your eyes. Leave before sunrise. The carvings looked old, like something clawed them instead of cut them. Inside, the air smelled of dust and something faintly metallic. The clerk was a thin man with skin like parchment and eyes that didn't move much. "Need a room?" he asked. His voice didn't match his face, calm, rehearsed. "Yeah, car broke down." He slid me a brass key tagged room 5. "You read the rules?" I smirked. "Yeah, some kind of joke?" He didn't blink. "No joke." When I turned to leave, he added, almost gently, almost tired, "Whatever happens tonight, keep your eyes shut." I didn't answer, just nodded, more to end the moment than believe him. By the time I reached room 5, the desert sky had turned black and soundless. Inside, the air felt heavy, like someone had exhaled and never inhaled again. And as I set my bag down, I heard it. Faint, slow, deliberate, something scratching from under the bed. Then silence, and the wood on the door creaked as if it remembered my name. The scratching stopped the moment I turned on the light. Just like that, silence, as if the sound had never existed. The room was small and square, the kind of place that looked cleaner in shadows. A single bed pressed against the wall, mustard-colored sheets that felt slightly damp. A nightstand, a flickering lamp, and a painting of a desert sunset that looked too recent. Its paint still glossy, still wet. I crouched, looked under the bed. Nothing. Bare floorboards, dust, an old shoe with a cracked sole. The sound, whatever it was, had dissolved into the stillness. "Old pipes," I muttered. My voice felt swallowed. Even my own breath sounded wrong, muffled like the air didn't want it there. I shut the door, threw my bag on the chair, and checked my phone. No signal. Not even an emergency line. The screen light flickered once, then dimmed, like the battery was dying, though I'd charged it fully that morning. The wood-carved rules hung on the inside of my door, too. I hadn't noticed at first, but there they were, identical, etched deep, the grooves darkened with age. I brushed my fingers over the carvings. The letters felt rough, uneven, as if someone had carved them in a panic. "Don't open room 6. I glanced through the peephole. Down the hallway, 6 doors in total, faded numbers on each. Room 6 sat at the far end, its number carved darker than the others. The hallway was still. Too still. I needed a distraction. I sat on the bed, pulled out my travel notebook, and wrote a note to myself, Red Hollow Motel, middle of nowhere. Rules carved in wood. Clerk's strange. Possible local superstition. But when I looked up, the painting had changed. The sunset was gone. The sky in the picture had turned gray, the dunes darker, shapes faintly visible in the sand, shadows that hadn't been there before. My heart skipped. I blinked, stared again. It looked normal now. Maybe it always had, maybe. I told myself exhaustion was playing tricks. 12 hours of driving, 2 skipped meals, 1 overheating engine. It was catching up. I turned off the lamp, lay down, and closed my eyes. The quiet pressed closer. Then the scratching returned. Soft, measured, not frantic like a rat or restless like branches. It sounded aware. A deliberate rhythm, like fingernails testing wood grain. I opened my eyes. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Someone there?" The scratching paused. A whisper followed, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. "Don't look." My pulse jumped. I sat up, frozen. The air shifted. The smell of dust thickened, mixed with something wet, like soil after rain. I reached for the lamp switch, but my hand stopped halfway. The clerk's voice echoed back in my mind. "Whatever happens tonight, keep your eyes shut." I sat there, motionless, listening. The sound moved, from beneath the bed to the far wall, slow, dragging, like something feeling its way along the boards. Then, nothing. Minutes passed. 5, maybe 10. Eventually I lay back again, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the dark, a whisper of breath exhaled. Not mine. Close. Too close. I slept eventually, though I don't remember falling asleep. When I woke, sunlight leaked through the curtains. For a moment, everything felt normal. The world had color again. The desert hum returned outside, the distant whine of insects, a gust of wind sweeping dust across the lot. I laughed under my breath, embarrassed by how real it had all felt. Hallucinating, that's all. Still, when I swung my legs off the bed, I noticed faint scratches on the wooden floorboards, 5 lines, evenly spaced, as if something had reached up from underneath. Breakfast wasn't offered, but I found the clerk still behind the counter, motionless as the night before. "Rough night?" he asked. I hesitated. "Heard some noises. Thought maybe raccoons, or wasn't raccoons." He didn't smile. "Then what?" He leaned forward slightly. "Did you open your eyes?" I blinked. "What?" He tilted his head. "When you heard it." "I know." I looked. "Yeah, but..." His mouth twitched, just enough to form something like disappointment. "You shouldn't have." I waited for him to laugh, but he didn't. Behind him, nailed to the wall, hung a dozen wooden plaques, each carved with a different set of rules. Some longer, some short. None identical, I pointed. "Those for decoration?" He didn't turn. "Those are what's left." "Left of what?" Guess who didn't listen. He slid a small black coffee across the counter. "Free of charge. You'll want to stay awake tonight." Before I could respond, the door creaked open. A woman entered, mid-30s, wearing dark sunglasses, though the room was dim. She froze when she saw me. "You're in room 5? "Yeah." She lowered her glasses slightly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, sleepless. "Move if you can." The scratching started in mine, too. "Before it moved rooms." The clerk didn't look up. The woman laughed, dry, hopeless. "He won't help you." "He can't. None of us can." Then she left, the door swinging shut behind her with a hollow thud. I stood there, the desert sunlight glaring through the dusty window, feeling the heat but not the warmth. The clerk finally spoke again, voice soft, almost apologetic. "Leave before sunrise," he said. I frowned. "That one of the rules?" He nodded once. "The most important one." Outside, the neon sign flickered again. Only this time, the word vacancy blinked out completely, and for a reason I couldn't name. My reflection in the glass didn't blink with me. By noon, the desert was a white mirror. Heat shimmered so hard it bent the air. My car still refused to start, and the motel sat in that stillness like it had been waiting decades just to trap sound. The clerk wasn't at the counter anymore. The lobby was empty except for a fan turning slow, creaking each time it completed a circle. On the wall, one of the carved plaques had fallen. The wood had split through the middle as though something behind it had pushed outward. Outside, I found the woman from earlier sitting on the concrete step, smoking a cigarette down to the filter. Her sunglasses were gone. Her eyes were bloodshot, the whites streaked yellow. "You didn't leave," she said. "Didn't have a choice," I answered. "Car's dead." She nodded like that was expected. "It always is." "What do you mean, always?" She didn't look at me, just at the horizon. "The desert kills the signal, the engine, the light. Everything stops working out here. Everything except this place." Her voice cracked on the last word. "You've been here long?" I asked. 3 nights. "Too long. Why not walk out?" "I tried," she said quietly. "Walked 5 miles that way?" She pointed toward the dunes. The motel was still there when I stopped. I turned around and it was behind me again. I stared at her, half expecting a smirk, some hint of exaggeration. "There wasn't. You ever open room 6? I asked. Her cigarette trembled. She crushed it out. "That's where my husband stayed." "And?" He didn't listen to the rules. She stood abruptly, walked away without another word, leaving behind the faint smell of ash and desert wind. That night, I sat at the small desk in room 5, notebook open, trying to rationalize everything. My entries had become frantic, scattered. Rule 2, don't open room 6. Why that room? Rule 4, if you hear scratching, don't open your eyes. Scratching heard twice. Entity, animal, or hallucination? The air conditioner clicked and died. The silence afterward was deafening, thick as static. The lamp flickered. Then the scratching began again, slow, close. I stared at the floorboards where I'd seen the marks that morning. They were darker now, the grooves deeper, like something beneath was pressing harder. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Not tonight," I whispered. I grabbed my phone to record it. The moment I hit record, the sound stopped. The floor stilled. When I played back the recording, I expected silence. Instead, I heard breathing, shallow, rhythmic, matching my own. Then a whisper, faint but distinct. Rule 5. Leave before sunrise. I froze. That line hadn't been scratched deep into the wood the night before, but I checked anyway. The rules on the door had changed. An extra sentence carved under the 5th line. Still raw, splinters fresh. If you fail, it will choose another room. I slammed the door open and stormed into the hallway. Room 6 was at the end. Door half closed, faintly ajar. I told myself not to. Every nerve screamed not to. But curiosity in horror stories always wins. It always does. The knob was cold metal biting into my palm. I pushed. The smell hit first. Rot and copper, like wet wood soaked in something that used to be alive. The room was dark except for the faintest flicker of movement. Not light, just motion. Inside, the furniture was gone. No bed, no lamp, only walls covered in carvings. Hundreds of lines gouged into wood, names, numbers, and phrases repeating in overlapping cuts. Keep eyes shut. Don't look. Forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me. In the far corner, something hunched. I couldn't see its shape clearly, but I saw movement. Jerky, uncertain. I stepped back instinctively, my heel creaking the floor. The sound made it stop. Then it turned, a head, I think. Or something that once was one. It didn't have eyes. Just deep sockets filled with dark resin. But I felt its gaze. I swear I felt it. A whisper came again, but not in words. More like the creaking of old timber shaped into meaning. You saw. I ran. The hallway warped around me. Doors on both sides stretching taller, narrower, breathing with the sound of wood flexing. When I reached room 5 again, I slammed the door and collapsed against it, gasping. The lamp was still on. My notebook still open. But every page now had the same line scrawled across it, written in what looked like burned ink. Don't open, room 6. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I went back to the office. The clerk was there again, as if he'd been waiting the entire time, unmoving. You looked, he said flatly. I didn't answer. Now it knows you. My voice came out cracked. What is it? He tilted his head. It's the reason for the rules. Who made them? He gestured to the wooden plaques. Every guest adds one before they leave. A rule they broke. A warning to whoever comes next. I felt my throat tighten. Then who carved the first one? He smiled faintly, sadly. No one remembers. But the wood does. By late afternoon, I packed my bag. The heat outside shimmered harder, the desert vibrating in the distance like it was alive. The woman was gone. Her car, her room, everything empty. The only sign she'd existed was a new carving on her door. Rule 7, don't follow the voices. That night I stayed awake, lamp on, notebook open. I started hearing faint tapping from the ceiling now, not just under the bed. It was pacing above, slow, deliberate. Then a voice from the vent whispered, "You can leave now." I froze. It was her voice. "The woman's. Where are you?" I asked. "Outside. Hurry, before sunrise." I grabbed my bag and opened the door. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Room 6's door was wide open again. "Keep walking," her voice said. "Don't look inside." I walked faster. My footsteps echoed wrong, a half-second delay, like someone else was matching me from behind. I reached the lobby. Empty. The front door was open. Desert wind spilling in. When I stepped out, the motel lights flickered and died. The world outside looked pale, unreal. The dunes shifted like breathing skin. Then I saw her, standing by the signpost, waving. But as I ran closer, I saw she wasn't waving. Her arm was moving, yes, but not by choice. It was pulled upward, bending at impossible angles, jerking like a puppet. Her eyes were gone. Just 2 dark hollows filled with that same resin I'd seen in room 6. Her lips moved. The voice came from behind me instead. "You saw." I turned. The motel lights had come back on. In every window, a shadow stood. Motionless silhouettes in every room. My room, her room, rooms that hadn't been rented for years. The clerk stood by the door, hands folded. "You can't leave now," he said quietly. "It knows you. It follows obedience and disobedience both. You made contact." "I just looked." He nodded once. "That's all it needs." That night, my third, the scratching didn't stop. It grew louder, spreading to the walls, the ceiling, the door. Every surface of the room trembled like a heartbeat. I pressed my palms to my ears, screaming, "What do you want?" And through the noise came one clear whisper, directly beside me. "Breath cold and damp. Add your rule." The lamp flickered out. When it came back on, a carving knife lay on the desk, old, stained, handle smooth from use. The wood on the door was blank now, waiting. I don't remember carving. I only remember the sound, the skirk of blade against pine, and the smell of splinters mixing with blood. When I woke, dawn was crawling through the curtains. The words were there, fresh and red. Rule 8. Don't write the rules. I stumbled outside into the blinding light. The desert stretched endless, silent. The sign flickered again, but now it read. The woman's car was still gone. The clerk was sweeping dust from the steps like it was just another morning. "You'll have to stay another night," he said. "No," I whispered. "I'm leaving." He looked at me with pity. "Everyone says that." He pointed to the lot. My car sat there. The hood closed. The engine idled smoothly, perfectly fine. For a second, hope broke through the terror. I got in, turned the wheel, drove fast until the motel disappeared in the rear mirror. The radio turned on by itself. A crackle. Then a voice. My own. Rule 8. Don't write the rules. I stopped the car. Looked back, the desert was empty. The motel was gone. But the wooden sign was standing by the roadside, half buried in sand. Fresh carvings glinted in the sun. 9 rules now. The last one read, Rule 9. If you think you escaped, you didn't. And from the radio, something began to scratch again. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. I drove for hours, or thought I did. The desert should have changed. Landmarks, shadows, clouds. But the same crooked Joshua tree kept reappearing on my left. The same buzz of wind like a whispering throat. When I passed the rusted red hollow motel, vacancy sign for the 3rd time, the last of my hope cracked. The sun was dropping again. I pressed the accelerator. The horizon bent, the sky reddened, and the air thickened with dust until the road itself vanished. My headlights cut through emptiness. The car began to slow even though my foot stayed heavy on the pedal. Then it stopped. No sputter. No sound, just stillness. The radio clicked. A hiss. Then my voice, recorded, trembling, played from its speaker. Rule 8, don't write the rules. I turned the key. Nothing. Behind me, far down the road. A faint orange light flickered, the neon sign awake again. The motel was back. I should have walked the other way. But terror has a gravity of its own. When I reached the parking lot, the air felt wrong, dense, humming like there was a second heartbeat beneath the earth. Every window glowed faintly, the same dim color as dying embers. The clerk stood in the doorway, hands folded, eyes steady. I told you, he said, voice brittle. You can't leave. What is this place? He tilted his head. A promise kept too long. Behind him, the lobby looked different. Walls warped, stretching upward like wet wood softening under heat. The plaques that once hung in rows now spiraled across the ceiling, their carved words twisting together into an unreadable pattern. I stepped inside. Where's the woman? I asked. The one from room 7. He hesitated. She's still here. Something creaked above. I looked up. Between the spiraled boards, her face was pressed into the grain, half-formed, eyes shut, mouth slightly open like she was sleeping inside the wood. I staggered back. What did you do to her? She broke the 5th rule, he whispered. She tried to leave before sunrise. The air around us pulsed, a slow, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The rules keep it contained, he said. Break them and it learns. It spreads. That's why you must write your rule, to feed it direction. Direction? It doesn't know the difference between punishment and prayer. The humming deepened, almost musical, a low wooden drone. The carved letters across the ceiling began to shimmer, bleeding their meaning into the room. Phrases folding over each other. Don't look, don't open, stay still. My own handwriting appeared among them. Rule 8. Don't write the rules. The clerk's gaze followed it upward. You told it what not to do. Now it understands what it can. The lights burst. Darkness. Then slow illumination from the carvings themselves. Every groove glowed faint amber, turning the room into a cathedral of living wood. Shapes moved inside the grain, as if the carvings were windows and something behind them was trying to crawl through. I backed toward the door. The clerk didn't move. His shadow stretched along the floor, long and wrong, bending away from him instead of following. "Stop," he said softly. "If you run, it follows. What happens if I stay?" His mouth trembled. "Then you join." The floorboards bulged beneath his feet, swallowing his shoes, his legs, up to his knees. He didn't struggle, just closed his eyes. The wood accepted him inch by inch until only his face remained, carved in place like the others. The humming paused. Silence spread outward like cold water. Then came the scratching, from under the counter, from behind the walls, from inside the floor. It wasn't one sound anymore. It was hundreds. I ran. The hallway stretched longer than it ever had. Doors multiplied on both sides, every number repeating, some backwards, some upside down. Each door whispered as I passed, wood grain shifting like lips. Rule 1. Check in before dark. Rule 2. Don't open room 6. Rule 3. Keep curtains closed after midnight. They recited themselves, overlapping like 100 voices speaking from inside the boards. The corridor slanted, then curved downward. My breath fogged in the air. The heat was gone, replaced by damp chill. The walls gleamed as though sweating. At the far end, one door waited, room 6, wide open. Darkness pulsing inside like a heartbeat. The same whisper that had haunted me since the first night drifted out. Add your rule. I stepped closer, inside. The carvings were deeper than before, the names erased, replaced by symbols that looked like branching roots. The air smelled of resin and smoke. A shape stood in the corner, the outline of a man, tall, rigid, made entirely of polished wood. Where his eyes should have been, the grain knotted into 2 spirals. The voice came from him, from inside the wood. "You looked." I swallowed. "I didn't mean to," you wrote. "I had to." "Then finish." The floor rippled, turning soft like wet bark. Lines spread outward, curling toward my feet, wrapping around my shoes, my ankles, warm at first, then tightening. Every instinct screamed to close my eyes, but the moment I did, I saw things behind the dark, faces pressed against invisible glass, whispering rules in every language. I opened them again. Gasping, the wooden man stepped forward. With each movement, splinters fell from him, reforming into shapes that crawled along the floor, reaching toward me. "Why me?" I choked out. "Why anyone? The desert forgets everything except what's carved. What happens if I stop it?" "You can't stop memory." The room tilted. My vision swam. The walls stretched upward until they disappeared into endless timber. The ceiling became sky, veined with cracks that glowed faint red. The wooden figure raised an arm. The carvings across his chest rearranged, forming a new sentence. Rule 10. Do not run from the wood. I turned and ran anyway. The hallway collapsed behind me, folding in on itself like closing jaws. The sound of splitting timber chased me, groaning, screaming, pleading. The motel wasn't a building anymore. It was alive, rearranging itself to keep me inside. I burst into room 5, slammed the door, pressed my back to it. The rules were gone from the wood, wiped clean. The walls were breathing, faint and rhythmic, exhaling warm air that smelled like soil. I gripped the carving knife still in my pocket. If rules gave it form, maybe new words could undo it. I pressed the blade to the door. "Stop," a whisper said from behind me, my own voice. I spun around, my reflection stood there, half-transparent, emerging from the wallpaper's pattern like it was printed into the room. Its mouth moved a split second after mine. "Don't write," it begged. "Every line feeds it. If I don't, it wins." It already did. The reflection smiled sadly, then stepped forward, out of the wall, merging light into flesh. I felt the impact like cold wind passing through my body. My hands moved without my will. The knife carved. Rule 11. Don't believe your reflection. Blood, no, not blood, something darker, bled from the letters, sinking into the wood. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was waiting. Then, softly, a child's voice whispered through the keyhole. "Thank you." The floorboards split open. I fell, not far, just enough to land on something soft. Sand above me. The motel loomed sideways, floating in a twilight sky. Its windows glowed like watchful eyes. I could see shapes moving behind them. Every guest who'd ever stayed. Every voice that had ever whispered a rule. The wooden man stepped out onto the sand. Now his face was mine. He held out the knife. "You wrote," he said. "Now you remember." I looked down. My arms were covered in faint carvings, each one forming letters, rules, warnings. They moved beneath my skin like worms. "What happens now?" I asked. He smiled with my mouth. "Now you keep them." The desert wind rose, carrying the smell of old timber and smoke. The motel began to sink, boards dissolving into sand, lights dimming one by one. The wooden figure dissolved too, scattering into ash that swirled around me before burying itself beneath the dunes. For a moment, there was quiet, honest quiet, no hum, no whispers. The sky lightened. Then I heard it again, faint and steady, far beneath the sand. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I opened my eyes. I was back in room 5, morning light through thin curtains. My notebook on the desk, blank pages waiting. The carvings on the door restored, fresh and sharp. I stumbled outside. The clerk was there again, sweeping dust from the steps, humming. "You look rested," he said. "How long have I been here?" He shrugged. "As long as anyone." I looked at the sign. The word vacancy blinked once, twice, then steadied. A new line had been carved beneath the others. Rule 12. Welcome the next guest. The broom slipped from his hands. He looked at me, puzzled, as though he didn't remember why he'd been holding it. My reflection in the window of the lobby smiled back at me, a heartbeat late. I understood then. The motel didn't need keepers. It made them. That night, headlights flared across the highway. A car pulled into the lot. A man stepped out, stretching, weary from the road. I met him at the counter. "Need a room?" I asked, a voice calm, rehearsed. "Yeah, car broke down." I slid him a brass key tagged room 5. "You read the rules?" He smirked. "Yeah, some kind of joke." I didn't blink. "No joke." He turned to leave, and I added, almost gently, almost tired, "Whatever happens tonight, keep your eyes shut." Dawn came the way it always did here, slow, heavy, as if dragging itself over the horizon. The desert stretched out like an ocean of pale sand, endless, soundless. I stood by the window, watching the sunlight fall across the motel sign. Dust shimmered around it like gold ash. Red Hollow Motel Vacancy. The words flickered once, then steadied. Behind me, the air conditioner hummed, an old, metallic drone that filled the silence between breaths. The bed was made perfectly corners crisp, the same thin comforter, the same scent of wood polish and dry air. Everything was exactly how it had been when I arrived. Almost. I could feel it, something beneath the quiet. The same pulse that had once terrified me now thudding softly in rhythm with my own heart. When the man from the highway came down that morning, he looked worse for wear, dark circles under his eyes, lips dry from the desert. "Didn't sleep," he muttered. Something kept whispering through the vent. I smiled the way the clerk used to, gentle, distant. "The walls shift sometimes. Old wood, nothing to worry about." He studied me for a second. "You the only one here?" "Always," I said. He nodded slowly, uncertain if that was a joke. When he left for his car, I watched from the lobby window as he tried the ignition 3 times. The engine refused. He hit the steering wheel, cursed, then got out again, dust swirling around his boots. He looked back toward the building, toward the carved rules nailed above the office door. Rule 1, check in before dark. Rule 2, don't open room 6. Rule 3, keep curtains closed after midnight. Rule 12, welcome the next guest. He didn't notice the last one. No one ever did, until it was too late. I spent the morning the way the clerk once had, sweeping dust that would return within minutes, polishing the counter, checking the empty rooms, though I already knew none were truly empty. In room 7, the woman still slept within the wall. Her face was peaceful now, the grain of the wood smooth over her features, as though she'd finally become part of the structure she'd feared. In room 6, I didn't enter. The door was sealed shut again, but sometimes it pulsed faintly, like a breath held just behind the threshold. And in room 5, my reflection moved a half-second late, always a little too slow, always smiling just after I'd stopped flinching at it. Acceptance is just exhaustion that's learned how to stand still. By afternoon, the heat had grown unbearable. The guest sat outside, smoking, squinting at the horizon. "You ever notice how the road just doesn't end?" he asked when I brought him water. "Like it's moving, but you're not," I nodded. "That's how most people find us," he laughed. "You make it sound like a trap." I said nothing. He glanced up at the sign again. "This place is strange." "Yes," I said softly. "It is." That night, the air thickened. The motel always changed with the setting sun. It felt like the desert itself inhaled, and everything inside held its breath. The guest didn't come down for dinner. I waited. At midnight, the lights flickered. The humming started again, the same low vibration, wood shifting against itself, faint whispers threading through the vents. I closed the lobby door. It begins again. I thought. I found him in the hallway, barefoot. Standing in front of room 6, he was whispering. Not words, just sounds, repeating, rhythmic. The door was trembling slightly as if something inside was responding to him. "Don't," I said. He turned. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "It's calling. They all call. You don't have to answer." "I think I do," he murmured. "It said it remembers my name." He reached for the handle. I grabbed his wrist. "No." His head snapped toward me, and for a second his face wasn't his. The grain of wood shimmered faintly under his skin, spreading from his temples down to his jaw. "It wants to be remembered," he whispered. It said that's all it ever was. The door cracked open on its own, just a sliver. A warm gust of air rolled out, carrying the smell of sap and dust. The whispering swelled until it filled the hallway. "Close it." I shouted. He didn't move. The air darkened, pulsing, thick with the hum of something waking. The carvings along the walls began to glow faintly. Words rearranged themselves. The rules shifted. Rule 6, don't open. Room 6 became Rule 6, don't let them close it. My stomach turned. The motel was rewriting itself. I shoved him backward, slammed the door, and pressed my hands against it. The wood burned cold against my palms, vibrating like a heartbeat. The whispers rose into screams, then fell silent in an instant. The man collapsed. His skin shimmered, the wood grain beneath it fading, leaving him pale and trembling. He looked up at me. "What is this place?" "Something that remembers too well," I said. He didn't ask again. The night passed without sleep. In the early hours, I sat at the front desk, staring at the carved plaque. The letters glowed faintly in the dark. I could feel it listening through the walls, through the floorboards, waiting for my choice. The motel wasn't just alive. It was aware. Every rule carved was a command. Every word fed it. If I wanted to end it, I would have to unwrite what kept it alive. But that meant carving again, using the same act that trapped me here. It was a perfect prison. When dawn came, the guest packed his bags. His car started this time, though it shouldn't have. He looked lighter somehow, like he'd left something behind without realizing it. At the counter, he turned. "You sure you'll be okay here alone?" "Yes," I said. He hesitated, then smiled. "You should get out sometime. A place like this could drive a man crazy." He left. The sign outside blinked once, twice, then steadied on vacancy. The hum beneath the floor deepened, pleased. For a long time after, no one came. The desert was quiet, and the motel slept. Days passed without change. The sun rose and fell over the same horizon, and I began to wonder if time still moved at all. Then one evening, as the light turned red, I saw movement far off down the road, a shimmer of heat. Then the faint glint of glass and chrome. Headlights, a car approaching, and beneath the tires the road bent slightly, as if making space for another arrival. I knew what that meant. I looked at the knife on the counter, the same one that had written the last rule. The carvings on my arms itched faintly, restless. Maybe this was the only way it could ever end. Not by escape, but by rewriting the story. I picked up the knife. On the back of the counter, below the last rule, I carved a new line. Rule 13, forget the rules. The walls shivered. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The humming stopped. Outside, the desert wind rose, wild, untethered. I stepped into the parking lot. The horizon split. Sky bending, sand lifting in a spiral. The motel shuddered behind me, boards creaking, signs falling. The carved words unraveling like smoke. For a moment, I thought it was dying. Then I realized it was remembering what it was before. The wind swallowed the sound. The motel sank, dissolving into sand and sunlight until nothing remained but the faint shape of its foundation. The sign was last to go, the letters peeling away one by one. When the final word vanished, the desert went still. I walked for hours, maybe days. The road wound endlessly through dunes until the heat shimmer blurred the sky into white. When I finally saw a shape in the distance, metal, color, motion, I ran toward it. A gas station, old, dusty, real. The attendant stared when I stumbled inside. "Where'd you come from?" he asked. "Down the road," I said. "Red Hollow Motel." His face went pale. "That place burned down 30 years ago." I froze. "What?" "Lightning hit it. Whole building went up in flames. Nothing left but sand and a few old boards." He frowned. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I smiled weakly. "Something like that." That night I rented a small room at the back of the station. Plain bed, cracked mirror, humming fridge. I should have felt free. But when I looked at my reflection, the smile came late again, and on the wooden frame of the mirror, faintly visible under the light, letters carved deep into the grain. Rule 1, check in before dark. My breath caught. I touched the words. The wood was warm. From far away, through the hum of the fridge and the whisper of the wind, I heard it again. Soft, patient, endless. Scratch. 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 Weeks later, travelers on Highway 9 reported a new structure standing alone in the desert. A small, quiet rest stop that hadn't been there before. A faded sign hung above its door. Red Hollow Inn, vacancy inside. The walls smelled faintly of cedar. The carvings were clean, and on the counter, under a thin layer of dust, lay a single brass key. Tag, Room 5.